everyone, and welcome to our Property Taxes 201. And the reason I named it that is because if you think you know anything about property taxes, you don't, and you're sure going to learn something tonight after Matt talks to us. So, the auditor's office is responsible for assessing property values and determining taxes. They follow they follow state law, obviously from the state. Treasurer's office is responsible for collecting taxes assessed by the auditor. Matt Nolan was elected as Warren County Auditor in 2014. Prior to being elected, Matt served as Deputy Auditor, and we have our Deputy Auditor right here, so he may be next in line, we never know. And Matt also served as an Assistant Prosecuting Attorney. He graduated from Miami University and the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. Matt has been recognized for his work and efforts both in Warren County and across the state. In 2020, his fellow auditors made him the first county auditor rewarded with the President's Award for contributions to the Auditors Association. So we're lucky to have him working for us. So I'm not sure how long Matt's going to speak tonight, but we should have time for Q&A afterwards. So if you have any questions, just hold on. And we are recording this tonight, and it'll be up on our township's YouTube page, and we'll post that sometime later this week. But welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Diane.
Yes,
Appreciate you having me. Everything Diane said is accurate. The Auditors Association did give me a nice award for largely helping create all of the legislation that we thought should get changed in the Ohio Revised Code to help taxpayers. As you mentioned, that was 5 years ago. None of that happened until last week. So we're going to talk a lot about the changes in the Ohio Revised Code that are hopefully happening. I really appreciate everybody coming out today. It is not, I drove to the middle school first, and there were like 200 cars out there. I was like, oh boy, this is going to be exciting. But this is a really good turnout, not the most exciting topic in the world. I was thinking about it as I drove over, everybody's got something they're an expert at. Like Paul, who works for me, is an expert at programming. Like he's got a skill set that's really useful in the world. Everybody here's got something that you're really good at. For me, it's Ohio's property taxes, which is just a terrible life decision. There's not a lot of use you can do with that. There's not a lot of other places you can use it. But for this one small time, this one small place, it's kind of interesting. And usually I start my spiel by saying, I don't have a lot of good news for you. Because in my world, there's not a lot of good news, right? Debt and taxes. Those are the two things we deal with, and that's just reality. And honestly, I've been your auditor for 12 years now, and for 11 months, I've never really had good news, other than taxes are going to go up. It is what it is. Pay your taxes. We'll provide you some good services, and that's the job of the auditor. There's really good news right now. There's a lot of positive things, other than the fact that my belt broke while I've been speaking, which we're just going to get rid of right now. There's a lot of good things happening to make life better for Ohioans, and I'm proud to say that the auditor's plan, the Toledo Blade did a story about 6 months ago that the title was Follow the Auditors. And the County Auditors Association laid out a series of ideas that we think would dramatically help taxpayers in Ohio. And if you've ever known me, I'm very critical of the Ohio legislature. If you've ever heard me speak before, I don't have a lot good to say about the Ohio legislation. I have to eat my words. They did an outstanding job. They literally did every single thing we said to do, and then added a little bit that we had thought of, but never even thought to suggest because we didn't think they did. So there's a lot of positive things coming. You do still have taxes. So I don't want to get too built up. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the basics of how our system works, why it works that way, and then I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the improvements that are coming to make it better. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the constitutional amendment. I was at the horse parade on Saturday, which I love. My little Lebanon horse, not little, a big Lebanon horse parade. And there were people there passing around a petition to eliminate property taxes. Some of you in this room have signed a petition to eliminate property taxes. It's a terrible, terrible idea. It is an awful idea. If it happens, you need to move out of the state of Ohio. It ends Ohio as we know it. it turns us into West Virginia immediately. And I'll detail why that is. We need to lower property taxes. We need to find ways to shift property taxes. We need to lower taxes in general. But we don't need to eliminate property taxes. It's bad policy, bad idea. We'll get into all that. So, this PowerPoint's not great. My PowerPoint's, I talk more. One thing I want to disagree with Diane on. She said, at the end, ask questions. Don't do that. If you have questions, if you have something like, I came to answer this one thing and then I'm going home, ask it. Jump, throw your hand up. If we're not a big group, we can talk like that. So feel free. So this PowerPoint I made when we were doing our reval, and so it talks a lot about where we were, and I added some things to where we are. So the good things about property values in Ohio, and in Warren County specifically, we are seeing the largest increases over the last 6 years, the largest increases to the largest asset that most of us own in the history of mankind. That is a positive thing. That is good. We have worked towards that. We have passed legislation towards that. Our whole system is about wanting those home values to be high and strong and good. So that's a positive. I've heard a lot of people say, well, this is an easy fix. Let's just lower property values. Let's just get property values down. No, no. You don't want, we had that, right? Property taxes went down one time in my lifetime. Anybody know when that was? 2008. We don't want that. All of us in this room lived through that. All of us were, adults. Most of us owning property in 2008. We don't want decreased property values. That's a bad thing. The bad thing is our tax system. The way our tax system is set up in Ohio, and this isn't intentional. There are people that think they set it up this way. I want to say Mike Kilburn. Some of you remember Mike Kilburn. Mike's a good friend of mine, longtime county commissioner. And Mike's reasoning was they set up this tax system to be so complicated so that nobody can understand. I honestly don't think that's the case. It is so complicated, nobody understands it. But I think it's actually out of, and I've seen this, people wanting to do good things, people wanting to help, and then creating a mess, and then using duct tape and bubble gum, trying to fix it all together. And when they did that, over time, it's made this huge mess that we now can't unwind. I'm going to say that we've largely unwound it, so there are positives at it, but that's the bad thing. And so I don't think most people are upset with property taxes. Maybe I'm wrong, you guys can tell me, no, you're just wrong. I think people are upset with the increases in property taxes, these very large jumps that they've seen every 3 years, and even with levies in between those 3 years. And that's what we're going to talk about, why those happen, how we fix those, how they don't. So every 6 years we reevaluate properties. It's really every 3 years at this point. And you saw it last year on the property tax bills that you're paying this year. You saw that we go around and we reevaluate the whole county every 3 years. And so how do we do that? I think there's a general consensus that if we take a dartboard and pick a number and throw it at that, and surprisingly, that's not how it works. At the same time, I've often heard people complain, they're drive-by appraisals, they're fly-by appraisals. They are, 100% they are. We are not going in each home in the county. There are 110,000 properties in Warren County, millions of properties in the state of Ohio. If we were to appraise every property the way they should be appraised to get an exact value, the way you would if you were a bank or you were buying a property, it would cost billions of dollars. That makes no sense. It's very inefficient. It's very ineffective. So what we do in Ohio, I call it the Price is Right valuation method. And this is what's done in most of the country. We get as close as we can get to the values without going over. How do we do that? We use the sales of properties. Each one of your houses is unique. Each one of your houses is special to you. But in actuality, it's a commodity. It's bought and sold, it has a value, and we can tell what that is by what other properties in your area sell for. And so we look at every property and we say, all right, everyone's selling for about this amount. We're going to value it just a little below that. And why do we go below that? Because we don't want to go over, right? And so when you're using medians and averages, You have to go a little below the median to make sure that nobody that's in the group is over. Do we get it right all the time? Absolutely not. I say we get it right about 99% of the time. About 0.5%, we're over. And there's a process you can go through to correct that, and some of you have been through that. And we lower values. Of the people that file, half the time they get their value lowered because we made a mistake. We assumed there was more in the house than there was, whatever. The other 0.5%, and we deal with this too, we have them way too low. Usually we don't know there's finished basements, we don't know there's been improvements. I don't get invited to a lot of house parties, I don't know what's in your house. And so there's values that are too low. Nobody ever complains about those, and they stay too low and it causes some problems with our system. But overall, I think we get the values fairly close to accurate. Again, erring a little on the low side. Now, where does that money go from that? And this is really important. And we're going to talk about how all these things change. But where does most of your money go that you pay in property taxes? Well, I think everybody knows that now. What schools? Your schools. Whatever school district you live in. And this, maybe it sounds simple, and maybe you guys already know this, but I'm going to belabor the point because I hear it so often. I don't know that I hear it. I feel it. That people think their money is going somewhere else. That their money is going to Columbus, that their money is going somewhere else. It is not. I don't love property taxes. I don't think it's the best way to fund a lot of things. It is the most local tax that exists. It stays right here. And so a lot of people will have fixes. These anti-property tax people have fixes, kind of. They're wrong, but they have fixes. Every one of their fixes involves money going to Columbus and getting redistributed out. That's how every other state does it also. Not almost every other state. Indiana, Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, all the states that we like the way they do things, they send their money to their state capital, and that state capital sends it back out. That's good in some ways. Not great for Warren County. Warren County is wealthy, one of the wealthiest counties in the state. So when you have 88 counties, and we're one of the 2 or 3 wealthiest, if we send money to Columbus, by definition, it can't all come back, right? It's got to be redistributed elsewhere. So the good thing about property tax is every single dime that you pay in property taxes stays right here. 65% of it goes right to this school district. And I think we've got to, I beat up, and we've got school treasurers here, we've got township trustees. I'm kind of infamous for pushing people to spend less and to cut carryovers, and we have good conversations, and we all work hard at it. But we also have to brag a little bit about how well we do it. Right? 609 school districts in the state of Ohio. Too many, by the way, but there's 609 school districts. The lowest cost to educate students in the whole state of Ohio is in Warren County. Anybody want to know where it is? Any guesses? Spring Grove. Spring Grove is the lowest in the entire state of Ohio. 609 school districts, the #1 lowest cost to educate a student, right next door in Spring Grove. The 13th lowest, right here at Wayne Schools. And so I look at it like my kids. Like, if my kid was in a class of 609 and they were 13, could they be better? Yeah, absolutely. I want them to try to get to 12. I want all of our school districts to be tied for first. But now I got to do my math. 597 are doing worse. And so you also have to pat them on the back and be like, hey, that's pretty good, guys. 13th is pretty good. And as a public official, I don't know, I know there's school board members here, tons of trustees here, we've got to encourage them a little bit, right? It gets a little old being told, do better, do better, do better. When you're doing that well, you got to give them a little pat on the back. And it can be, hey, you're doing great. I'd like a little better, but at least tell them they're doing great, because 13th is really good. But yeah, so that's the #1 place your money goes. If you're in the village, the #2 is there, to the village. Third is the county, the Board of Developmental Disabilities, Senior Services, and then the little bit that goes to the county general fund. Then the township, and that's pretty much everything. Little tiny bit to the library, little tiny bit to recovery services, things like that. But all of that money, and it's not going when I was testifying a lot, there was kind of this idea, well, we just cut these services and then we can cut property taxes. They're gonna be cuts. But you gotta think what those cuts are. It's school, mostly it's gonna be school cuts. And then it's fire department, right? That's gonna be your next biggest expense, and police. It's the basic core services that are being provided. Warren County doesn't have all of those levies that our neighbors do. We don't have a zoo levy. We don't have a money that goes to stadiums or things like that. We just don't have that in Warren County. Our money goes to the core services, and we can have, debates and discussions on, should we have one less administrator? Should we make 3 runs instead of 2, or whatever? I'm talking about things I don't think about. Those are healthy debates, but everything we're talking about are core services and how we fund those. There's really very little fluff that we fund. We don't have a parks levy in Warren County. One of the few counties our size that doesn't have something like that. It's just not how we do things here. So this is a chart that shows that. I'm colorblind, so you're gonna have to take my word for it. You can guess. The big part there is the schools, and that's how we do things in Ohio. One thing that's changed a lot, and we talked about this a lot in the committee that the governor set up, when property taxes 40 years ago were largely coming from the state, and everybody talks about there's a Supreme Court case that says we're funding schools too much locally. And at that time, schools were funded about 50-50, roughly, state and local. Now they're funded about 70-30 local versus state. And so we've continually shifted taxes from the state's burden to the local's burden. Again, the overall concept, we probably don't love. For Warren County, it probably benefits us. Being a wealthy county, being a wealthy district, it probably helps us. We keep shifting. We've also shifted from commercial to residential. It used to be that the commercials played a much larger role. Now the residential plays a lot more. Part of that's just the changing of the economy. We don't have the big industries that we used to in the state of Ohio. Part of that is that other communities, not this one, but other communities exempt a lot of their commercial properties. So if you go into the city of Dayton, city of Cincinnati, all those new commercial buildings that are being built, they don't pay property taxes. City of Waynesville, Village of Waynesville doesn't do that. They don't exempt properties. The township doesn't have exempt properties. So those are decisions that are made locally to try to prevent that. There are advantages to exemptions. Procter & Gamble in Mason is completely exempt for 30 years. It also helped build the entire city of Mason. So, there are advantages to them. Overall, I'm a very strong opponent of exemptions. I think they're a bad idea. I don't think they actually work. Talk about how we value. So I got to give credit. We're going to talk about what's changed. So that's a lot of how things are set up now. But I want to emphasize. And so if you called my office last year and wanted to complain about property taxes, we'd explain things, but then we would say, call these people. We can't do anything. The county auditor is a creature of statute. My job is to enforce the laws that are put in place as to how you value property and how you set the tax rates. That's my job. These people create things. And so they need to fix it. That's their job. Legislators fix it. So Michelle Teska is your state rep up here. Adam Matthews is the state rep for the southern half of the county, if anybody lives down there. And Steve Wilson is the senator for office. And up until literally 2 weeks ago, nothing had been done on property taxes in almost 40 years. Literally nothing. 2 weeks ago, the complete property tax system was overhauled. And so let's go through what the changes are that are coming. And so I'll talk with my hands too. So if you watch any of my old YouTube videos, which means you have no life whatsoever, I will talk about how values go up and tax rates come down and your taxes stay about flat. And most of us have gray or grayish hair, as mine is getting, and you remember that. You remember 2012 or 2005 or those times. And none of those times, even though values were going up, you never felt the property tax increases. The reason was something called the 920 effect, House Bill 920, that did that. When values went up, it adjusted the tax rates down, and taxes stayed about flat. That broke. And I can get into all the details, you probably prefer I don't, but suffice it to say, values went up a lot, and the rates weren't allowed to come down anymore. And you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out when that happens, you're gonna see much bigger increases in taxes. That's what broke. And so what the legislature did is they fixed that. And they said, we're not gonna let that happen anymore. The tax rates are gonna come down. And so the only thing that can go up going forward, every reevaluation going forward, your taxes cannot increase more than the rate of inflation unless you vote for it. That's a big deal. And that was our idea. I'm gonna take credit for that. The Auditors Association idea, we did that. The legislature did it better. They improved our idea. They said, okay, we'll do that going forward, but people need help now, not going forward. And so they said, the last reval, when everything went up 30%, we should have fixed this back then. And so they're going to lower your taxes so that it looks like they didn't go up during the last reval. The governor's got to sign it. It's a really good deal. I know it doesn't sound that exciting to anybody else. To me, that's a really big deal. And so the governor's got to sign it. Everything I'm talking about, the governor has to sign. He's got to sign it. He created a committee, put 12 of us on it, said, come up with ideas to fix this. This was our number one idea. It was his committee that said this is the number one idea. If he doesn't sign it, that would be shocking. So he's going to sign it. The problem is tax bills are coming out in a couple weeks. They can't fix it for that tax bill. But for the summer, they're going to fix it, and they're going to give you credit for the first half too. So your second half tax bill is going to be quite a bit lower than last year's was, and then your first half bill is. So that's a positive. There's immediate help coming to all of you in Wayne School. Anybody here not in Wayne School? Or Springboro? Well, Springboro and Wayne are in the same boat. So anybody in Springboro Wayne School, you're going to see immediate relief on that second half bill. So that's a great thing. Also, not only can the school not get more than inflation, in the past, there was a system where the county, the village, the township, we all went up as well. So these last couple reval cycles, the township, village, and the county got a pretty good increase in revenue because values went up so much. And the legislature said, all right, thank you, auditors, you're right, the schools are the biggest part of it, but why is everybody else getting these big increases without a vote? They shouldn't get an increase either. And we're like, yeah, that's a good point. So nobody's getting an increase more than inflation with reval. So when you see a reevaluation anymore, don't even get nervous. Your taxes are not going up as a result of that. That's too strong. They're not going up more than inflation. So if inflation is 7%, your taxes, go ahead.
How's inflation going to be determined?
Yeah, there's a factor that they're using, and it's in the statute, but it's the rate of inflation as run. I have to get the exact language for you, but yeah, it's going to be the standard inflation that you index that you see. So inflation right now is roughly 3%. You're not going to see the tax increase higher than that for that 3-year period. So that's a positive. You are going to see more levies. Almost by definition, I expect to see more levies, right? Everybody has used those increases over the years so that they don't have to put on levies. They know the increases are coming. You know, people, these fiscal officers are smart people, they're well educated, they know how things work. So they don't have to put a levy on because they know they're getting an increase. Now they're going to not get those increases, and so they're going to have to come. And so we have a poll out there that said 71% of people thought it was a good idea to get rid of property taxes. I don't know if I believe that poll, but it's out there. It's a legit polling agency that said that. At the same exact time that that poll is out there, levies are on the ballot across the entire state of Ohio, including all over Warren County. Anybody want to guess what percentage of levies passed in the state of Ohio this November? 82%. 71% of people said we should get rid of property tax. 82% of the property tax levies that were on in the state of Ohio passed. That's hard for me to put together. You know, if you think property taxes shouldn't exist, why are you voting for levies that increase property taxes? And that's a big discussion point that we have as we talk about property taxes in the state. Every single property tax that you pay, except for a little tiny bit that were created in the 1930s, was voted on by the voters in the community. And everything that we're paying here, it's very democratic. So there's a commission out there that some of you have heard about. Come back to that one. Some of you have heard about called the Budget Commission. Is that a name that somebody recognizes? Anyways, Budget Commissions exist forever. I've been on it forever. And the idea of the Budget Commission is you're going to make sure that local governments are not collecting more money than they need to. It's the main idea behind the Budget Commission. And so we've worked with the DD board and helped lower their budget or their levy because the role of DD changed. They were collecting more money than they need to. We rolled that back. We worked with Marriott Cook Library. They, for a while before the expansion, they were collecting more money than they needed. We rolled their levy back. So we've done this in Warren County for a long time. But there were some county prosecutors that said, you don't have the authority to do that unless the local government agrees to it. I didn't believe that, but some prosecutors did. And so this legislation says, no, the Budget Commission can and shall lower levies if there's too much carryover balance or if they're collecting more than they need. So that's in place. We're going to do that fairly aggressively in Warren County as we always have. But there was a lot of people out there that said, you have no authority to do that. That was the voters that put that on. Why do you get to override the will of the voters? So, you know.
Doesn't that incentivize people to spend more money
Yeah.
that they don't need to spend?
Absolutely, that's a really, so then we're gonna hear the question. Does it incentivize local governments to spend money that they don't need to spend? And I think that that can happen. So there's this concept out there that you have big carryover balances. If you don't spend it, we're gonna take it away from you. And, okay, but let's go and spend it. And so I'm always concerned about that. I'm always concerned about when we bring it up. And I will tell you in practice, it never works that way. From what I've seen, because you gotta remember, everybody that's running these programs are also Warren Countyans. So at least in Warren County, we don't have people there are some, but there are not very many. Most people in Warren County are tight. Like they make squeeze those nickels tight. So I haven't seen it happen. I'm not gonna call out anything. I've seen places where as soon as we said it, all of a sudden there was a shiny new truck somewhere and things like that. That does happen, but the way we've done it with the Budget Commission is just make sure everybody knows. It's a year-by-year thing. You're not gonna be out money forever. You're just out for the short period of time. Right now in Warren County, there's 5 levies that are rolled back around the county. It's always happening. I think we've built up trust with people to know you can do this. Things happen, things change. Yeah. So that I have not seen that. Now, if they would have done what the legislature had proposed, which was a hard cap, if you have over 30%, we're not giving you any more money, that I think would cause a lot. But if it's a soft cap, if you work with people, we haven't seen it like that.
So the cities and villages have input into, like, if we want to save money towards a future project,
100%.
that
That's
comes out as an excess that you'll take it away from.
not at all, not at all. And so what we say as the Budget Commission is, you have to have a plan. So let's say, and we've had this conversation with the township this week. Fire levies are the best example. Every single fire department in Warren County has a carryover balance, a fairly large one. It's very expensive to buy a fire truck. Very expensive. And so we know that having a large carryover balance is necessary because they're saving up for a goal. Saving up just to save up is unacceptable. Saving up for the possible worst case scenario, also unacceptable to me. But saving up with a plan of, in 5 years, we're gonna need a fire truck, we're saving towards that, makes perfect sense. And we have constant conversations. So, again, 12 years in the auditor's office. The 4 years before that, I represented the townships as a prosecutor. Constant conversations as to how we do that. We've rolled back over 20 levies in Warren County. Never once has it been done via hammer. It's always been done via conversation of, yeah, we know we're not gonna need this, let's roll it back. You know, has there been prodding at times? Occasionally, but more it's, hey, we know we don't need this right now, we can roll it back. What I don't like, and what I think I can speak for the whole budget, the Budget Commission is your county treasurer, Randy Dubin, your county prosecutor, David Flintshell, and myself. I think we all feel the same way. Just saying,
hey, we like this little safety net over here so that we never have to run a levy, that we're not okay with. And there's this little idea out there, it's kind of an interesting one of, we're making so much money on interest, let's just hold this money. I don't like that too, because it's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. And they could be making that much money on interest. So I'm not okay with that. I am okay with, we need to be working towards a plan to purchase these, to pave this road. As long as there's a plan in place, and we're seeing it actually work out. There is a village, I'll call them out, they're not here, so they don't like this. Corwin. Corwin has been telling me, one, I don't think Corwin should exist. I don't think Butlerville should exist, I don't think Pleasant Plains should exist, I actually don't think Harveysburg should exist. I do think Waynesville should exist. But I think a lot of these local governments should go away. But they've been telling me they're gonna pave the roads in Corwin for a decade now. They have. And that money's growing and growing and growing. At some point, we're gonna come to a head with Corwin and say, all right, pave the roads, or give the money back to the taxpayers, what makes it so. And so, that's a lot longer answer, but does that answer kind of what our thoughts are? That's a great question. Any other questions? I don't know, everybody's from different areas. Anything?
We understand that budget because you can gear it up, back up also, though, right? I mean, if you take it down, it could be geared back up.
100%. So just to be clear though, geared back up to where it would otherwise be, right? We can't ever go. The reason I said there was a Democratic senator from Northeast Ohio who said, well, shouldn't the Budget Commission be able to go higher than the voters wanted if they can go lower than the voters wanted? No, we can only go to what the voters wanted. And that's what we did. So Mariel Cook's a perfect example since we're standing in. Mariel Cook for 2 years said, we don't need the money we're bringing in. We don't have any projects. Lower our levy. And we did, I think, halfway. And then they were bought the property next door, and they had some projects come up, they put it in the park. So they need the money. The Budget Commission doesn't decide whether or not what you're doing is a good idea. I don't know how to run a library. I definitely don't know how to run a school. I know nothing about fire departments. What we do know about is money. And so you tell us the plan that you think is best, that your voters put you in place to do. And as long as that's the case, we leave it like that. It's just about where the savings are. And we go down, we come up, we move all over. So yeah, that's great. Other questions, thoughts?
So where do those funds go when you call it back? Or do you call it back on the next?
Yeah, everything's forward looking. Great question. Yeah, we had that question from an elected official today. We can't ever go backwards. Everything's forward looking. So there's no, as balances grow, we can reduce levies going forward, and then they pay down on those, but we can't go backwards. This is where we're going to see immediate relief coming as well. And this is, I told you that the auditors had a lot of good ideas and a lot of things changed. This was the one that I loved, and I was told this is never going to happen. And it happened. Also the most likely to get vetoed. So put that out there. But right now, if you look at your tax bill, it's kind of confusing. But you get 2 credits. You actually only pay 87.5% of the taxes that you owe. The state pays the other 12.5%. And so, long story as to why, but they put these credits in place a long time ago, and so that's one of the best credits in the country. And 2.5% is because you've lived there, and 10% is because it's not a business, it's a residential property. That makes sense. And these credits were put in place when the income tax was created as an incentive, saying, hey, all you residents of Ohio, you're going to pay an income tax now, we'll give you a break on your property taxes. That's why they're created. Well, out-of-state investors are aware of these credits. And anybody that's ever invested in real estate knows that every dime you don't have to pay in taxes is a dime in your pocket, right? And so people from California and New York saw low property values, which I know it doesn't feel that way, but to them these look low. They saw relatively high rents, and they said, plus, we don't have to pay this 10% tax because the state's going to pay it for us because it's residential property. No, the name of the credit is non-business credit, and we're paying it to all of these large businesses that are buying up our houses in Ohio. And it creates 2 problems. One, they get this big credit that you have to pay for because you're sending your money to Columbus and it's being used to pay for that. Problem one. But problem two, it's incentivizing out-of-state investors to Ohio to buy up our properties and turn them into rentals. We do not want more rental properties. That is not a positive for anybody. It also drives up the value, right? If you've got out-of-state people buying up properties, that drives up the value, which, as we talked about at the start, is going to drive up your value and your taxes. And so what the legislature has done is over a period of 4 years, they're eliminating the non-business credit. It will be gone completely. And they're taking every dime that was supposed to go to the non-business credit, and they're putting it to your owner-occupied credit. And so if you live in your home, right now you're getting 12.5%. By the time it's done, it'll be 15% or higher. That's going to an owner-occupied credit that they're not going to get. So really positive move, unless you own rental property. And so it doesn't just affect, I always pick on American Homes for Rent because they're not here and they don't vote for me, so I don't care about it. I'm just kidding. But they're a huge buyer of properties in Warren County. And so I pick on them. But it doesn't just affect American Homes for Rent. Some of you own rental properties in Warren County or in Ohio. You do. You're going to pay more taxes. A little controversial. Some people are upset about that. I think it's the right thing to do. I'll be honest, I own rental property. I'm going to pay more money. I don't love it. I think it's the right thing to do. So, just to know, again, 4 years, it's going to be implemented. Any farmers in the room? No, you're not. Your dad is. So, farms is a very controversial part of this. Farming is also a business. I personally don't think farms should get the non-business credit because they're running a business and they already get a huge tax credit. But the Farm Bureau is the strongest lobby in the state of Ohio. Do not mess with the Farm Bureau. So the Farm Bureau, farmers will continue to get the equivalent of the non-business credit. If you got rid of that, huge savings for everybody else. But that's not going to happen. So we will talk about it. I'm the only person that says that because we don't have enough farmers in the Warren County left to drive me out. So this is my house. Not really relevant. The district, a lot of this stuff is talking about, what we saw in value increases last year. Everybody here probably saw about a 30% increase. We're going to go through this process again in 2 years, well, a year. And so I'm not expecting as big increases. We haven't done all the analysis. My guess is it'll be closer to 20%. But don't be mistaken. Values are still going up. The good thing, as we talked about, it doesn't matter what values go up anymore. Actually, we want huge value increases now, as everybody in this room, because there is no correlation between value increases and taxes anymore. And so value increases are really only a positive thing from a tax sense, from an asset sense. I am concerned about property values as a father, because I don't know how my kids are ever going to buy a house. So there are other sociological things to think about that worry me. But from a pure tax sense, we've taken value and tax increases and separated them, which I think is very healthy. I think it makes for a much better system. CAUB, just because Carrie's here, I got to put up this slide. For any time you hear a farmer complaining about their taxes, this is the very, very, very large savings that farms get. People tell you that they spend a lot of money and America would be gone without farms. What am I missing? You're behind me. You're behind me. Commercial property. Anybody here own commercial properties? Okay. So commercial properties, as I said, they don't feel the same reasons. The system has worked for commercial properties in a couple ways. Values haven't gone up the same way. Rates do come down when values do. So almost anybody that owns commercial properties never seen tax increases on their properties. That'll continue. This helps commercial properties in the same way. They just haven't felt the same impacts. We're not seeing increases on most commercial properties with one huge exception, apartments. Right? The apartment industry is just booming. We're seeing more multifamily built everywhere in the county, and I can't keep up with the values. I'm chasing them constantly. So If you have your own apartments, those are going to go up. But, yeah, so I like this because this is the slide that I created earlier this year when I was giving this presentation everywhere, and I said, what can you do? Talk to your legislators, reduce inside millage, schools are the keys to everything. And they did every single thing we asked. I mean, I can't think of a time when we've asked the legislature, hey, we need a fix in this area, please come do these things. And they did every one of them. So, again, some of you know me, I've never said a positive word about the legislature in my entire life. And I'm here telling you, they did a really good job. They really did. They did everything that we could. We need to talk a little bit about, as a society, what taxes we want to pay, right? I mean, there's a lot of different options out there. People talk about Florida all the time. Everybody brings up Florida. Florida has so many advantages that they shouldn't even be discussed, right? They're a peninsula in the middle of the ocean. If you put a sales tax in Cincinnati, what does everybody do? You drive to Kentucky, right? I mean, we're smart people. You drive to Kentucky. You can't put a big sales tax in a state that's surrounded by other states. They just drive out. If you put a sales tax in Miami, where are they going to go? Drive 3 hours across their entire state? Of course not. So Florida has, not to mention they're surrounded by beaches, and some crazy guy took up all the swamp and put the biggest amusement parks in the world. Like, they've got some advantage that nobody else can look at. But other states don't have that. Tennessee is more similar to us. And Tennessee taxes their corporations much higher than we do. They have a much higher sales tax than we do. And so they use other methods. They have much higher license fees and things like that to generate money so that they can do things. Ohio's cut all of them. It's very cheap to do almost everything in Ohio except to live. And so, our income tax is coming down. Our legislature has cut the income tax every single budget cycle the last 16 years, the last 8 budgets. So we have very low state income taxes. But when you lower everything else, the revenue still has to come from somewhere. That ended up being property taxes. And so now, with property taxes also being cut, we'll have to find alternatives. So, any questions, ideas, things that I didn't hit on that you guys are curious about? Always wanted to know? Kelly, you want to tell us how Springboro got to be the lowest? Anybody else know? Go ahead.
How does Tennessee manage to not have property taxes?
Tennessee has property taxes. Yeah, every state in the country has property taxes. Tennessee's are lower than ours, for sure. Ohio has the 8th highest property taxes in the country, and growing. But every single state has property taxes. Florida, DeSantis is saying he wants to cut property taxes. He's kind of fibbing. He wants to cut residential property taxes, raise business property taxes. But even that, they're having a tough time with. But yeah, every single state in the country has it. But most states that every state that has lower property taxes than Ohio has a centralized form of government. And again, that's going back to what I was saying, a Columbus-based, an Indianapolis-based, where everything flows in and the state controls what happens with that money when it comes out. Ohio and Illinois, those are the 2 states, 2 of the highest property tax states in the country, that have what we call local control. And if you talk to the school districts, if you talk to your village, they're going to tell you, we love local control, right? We don't want somebody in Cleveland or Columbus telling Waynesville how we're going to run our village. We're going to do it right here. And I will tell you that is fake. It is the myth of local control. Because Columbus tells us how we're going to do everything. They're going to tell us, what we're going to teach in our schools, what our standards are, they tell us almost everything. But we like the idea of local control. We have 608 school districts. Anybody know how many Florida has? 66. Which happens to be the same number of counties they have. By county. That's how Kentucky does it. That's how Tennessee does it. But, and that sounds good. Everybody loves it. Every time I bring it up, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Until I bring up football. Franklin and Carlisle should become one school district. They both know my feelings on it. I tell them both that. Almost everybody agrees with it. what about the Franklin Carlisle football game? That's a big deal. What are you gonna do? And so, you know, everybody supports my ideas of consolidation as long as it's somebody else being consolidated and not them. And I think that's a hard thing. It's a county thing. If Warren County and Clinton County merge tomorrow, would that many people notice a difference? I'd probably lose my job. Their county auditor is much nicer than ours. You know, but other than that, like, I don't know that you'd notice that much of a difference. But those are hard things. We've had some really good joint districts. Actually, we do something great right now here that nobody knows about. We don't talk about it enough. Wayne Fire Department provides fire services for other governments who then pay them for the service. So Washington Township doesn't have a fire department. They actually pay Wayne Township to do it for them. Money for you guys that you don't have to pay out of your tax dollars. Consolidated service. Brilliant idea. I want to do it all over the place. But it causes controversy. People think they're not getting the level of service that others are. We had a joint EMS district in Franklin Township and Carlisle. People thought they were getting their fair share, things didn't go, people didn't get along, broke up. Mason and Deerfield had a joint fire district for a long time. A lot of the chiefs around here were parts of that department. Again, not chief, Deerfield thought they were getting the raw deal, and Mason was getting more than their fair share. Mason thought they were getting more than their fair share, so it broke up. And that kind of jealousy stuff happens all of the time with all local governments, and it's a big reason we have so much administration of all these things, because we have all these local governments. Again, I think on Corwin, Butlerville, Pleasant Plain, what service do they provide? They exist, they get tax dollars, you know, and so those kind of things, I'd love to see it happen internally. I don't think we can force it to happen, because I think people will get too upset. But I'd love to see communities come together and say, hey, can we just do this jointly? Can we just not need all of this? That's my hope as ways that we can.
Can you talk a little bit about how new construction, factors into the total tax base? And,
Yeah.
the collective tax?
Great question. New construction is new money. Okay? And so every time a house is built, they come in at the same tax rate as everybody else. And it doesn't lower your taxes at all. Every time a new house is built, they come in at the same tax rate, and so you got a $500,000 house that's paying $8,000 a year in taxes. That's just $8,000 new dollars that is coming around to be spread out amongst everybody else. And so, in general, new construction, new money, good. Unless that new construction creates service needs. And that, and you have to figure out where that balance is. In general, commercial new construction, always good. No students to the school, new money, relatively few calls, hopefully EMS-wise and else. And so anytime you're getting new commercial construction, from a tax perspective, I know, Wayne Township doesn't always like green space going away, but from a tax perspective, always good. Residential new construction, not always good. If new residential construction brings a kid with it, even one kid, it's not paying for itself. So every house that goes in that has a kid with it is not paying for itself. And multiple kids, for sure not paying for itself. And so new residential construction with kids is bad for, again, solely from a tax. We need more houses. We need places people live. I want my kids to buy a house someday, hopefully sooner rather than later. They're 12 and 9, so not. But, and so that's the way I look at it, is we need new houses, but we have to understand that if kids come with it, it's going to put a burden on the school district, which means it's going to be a burden on the rest of us to pay for those new kids. There is a shifting dynamic, and we were talking about it beforehand. It used to be, you just assumed every new single-family home was going to have kids in it. It's not that way anymore. And so we're seeing kind of a declining population in a lot of our school districts as a result of that. So the math isn't the same as it used to be, but does that make sense? Does that answer? Go ahead.
Yeah, I happen to be in that basket of the
Yeah.
Also, I voted for you, so I'm not being adversarial. However, my question is on the Delta and for seniors.
Yeah.
What can be done for seniors? And maybe you already addressed that the Delta issue's been taken care of with this new legislation. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what you were saying, you could maybe confirm that. But also for seniors, because I run a nonprofit, have for 20 years in this community that represents a couple hundred seniors.
Yeah.
And they're really concerned.
Yeah.
They're really pinched. And so when you see these go up year after year, I don't know, maybe there was a fallback. I can't remember if you said we ever did fall back or if budgets ever get decreased. But as a nonprofit, you sometimes have to decrease your budgets when things are not as good. And I don't know if that happens in this environment. So maybe you can address the Delta and also for seniors, any kind of legislation to take up.
Great question. Thank you. What nonprofit are you with?
Local church and
The local church, okay, yeah. So seniors, it's really interesting. When this all started, the number one thing on the auditor's list, we had a sheet that we passed around, and it's kind of prophetic in that every single part of that sheet is now law, except one. And it's actually our number one, which was expand the homestead exemption, was the number one thing. And the reason we put it number one is because it was a late. Last General Assembly, the House passed an well, let me back up a second, because I do this a lot where I talk about this topic that I know so much about, and I forget that this isn't your whole lives. The homestead exemption. Does everybody know what homestead is? So homestead applies to people that are 65 or older or permanently disabled, and for all intents and purposes, it's a $400 reduction on your property taxes. If you're a veteran who's disabled as a result of your service, it's an $800. One of the smallest homestead exemptions in the whole country. Highest property tax in the country, almost one of the lowest homesteads. So that's a burden on seniors. So last General Assembly, the House passed an expansion of homestead, the Senate passed an expansion of homestead, almost identical, but not exactly identical. And so if you remember civics class in high school, they have to come together and they have to agree, and they couldn't do that. So it didn't get done. So we put that as number one. Like, of course we're going to expand homestead. The people complaining the loudest are the senior citizens. Arguably the people most in need are the senior citizens. We're going to help them. Didn't happen. Every other thing on our checklist was checked, except for homestead. So homestead hasn't changed. The problem with homestead, back before 2013, anybody that was 65 or older qualified. But in 2013, they put in a income qualification. You have to have a earned income, Ohio adjusted gross income, of less than $40,000 to qualify. That number means not Social Security included. So if you have Social Security above that, that's okay. But you must be below that without Social Security. The truth is, in Warren County, that's very few people. And, you know, $40,000 adjusted gross income and, you know, pre-tax income isn't very high. And so not many people qualify. Very few people get into the program anymore. And so we'd like to see that go up. That's the easy fix for that. But I don't think it's going to happen because the legislature did so much. They said, we fixed the problem. They did, but senior citizens are still going to have this high tax. And it's the biggest problem with property taxes is even now, they're going to go up with inflation. Well, my salary about goes up with inflation. Most of your salaries hopefully go up with inflation. Senior citizens don't. They don't see that increase, so their taxes are going up more. And so I think we need to make some adjustments to homestead to answer that. To your other question about clawback, there's no, other than this one part that we're talking about, where everybody in Waynesville, everybody in Springboro is going to see their taxes come down this year. So that will help them in that context. So that will kind of be a clawback for them. But other than that, you know, I'm a little mixed on that. Senior citizens have had the best economic time in human history in the 90s and 2000s. And we're putting things in place to help them where Gen Xers have had the worst economic times to come in between student loan debt and housing prices, and we're doing nothing to help them. And I'm in the middle, and I know nobody's going to help And I don't think we really need help in the middle. I worry about young people more than I worry about old people, I'll just be honest about that. And I think there's kind of a growing trend towards that. I will say when I'm with the property tax elimination people, they definitely skew towards 70 plus. And I spent a lot of time with a lot of them, quite a few of my friends of mine. You know, the 70 plus, I don't love that. I don't think my grandparents would have supported something like that because their number one concern was their grandkids. And there's no question that eliminating property taxes directly impacts children in schools. There's no other way to say it. So that's a long way to answer.
I can't remember the name of the program.
Yeah.
When you build a new development
Yeah.
and they agree to pay higher taxes. I forget what it's called, but.
I don't.
Economic, I can't remember.
Economic impact stuff, because it's gonna affect sewer things,
No, it's not
water and all
that.
kinds of services, do they sometimes have to pay a fee to make up for the
No.
cost of causing?
It's not an impact fee, it's,
There's TIPs, CRAs, New Community Authority.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what I thought we were talking about. It's interesting. We have one in Warren County, one of the biggest in the country, in the state. So I'm going to answer your question now. I do want to address impact fees because people talk about that a lot. We should talk about it more. So Union Village, anybody know Union Village? So if you're driving on 741, where the prisons are, on 63 and 741, there's the prisons, then there's Otterbein, and then there's this massive field with these kind of unique houses being built. It's the largest proposed housing development in Warren County history. It's called Union Village. And the idea was that people were going to so want to live there in these unique houses, they were going to build a new city. Basically what they were going to do. And you agree to pay a 15 mil, which, I'll do the math for me, $475 per $100,000 more in taxes. Right, don't trust me. More in taxes, and that money will go to the developer. And in theory, the developer will have used that money to build all of these things around you, infrastructure, other things, restaurants, parks. And so that's the idea behind the new community authority. I hate it. And the reason why is the developer knows that fee is on there. Except you don't know that. And you sign a piece of paper. We've been through a residential real estate closing recently. You sign about 5,000 pieces of paper. And one of the papers you sign is that you're part of the new community authority. And you don't ask any questions. And then you get a property tax bill, because I've got to collect this fee. And it's 15 mils higher than anybody else in the city of Lebanon. What are you getting for that? You don't see it. It's all going to the developer. So I really dislike new community authorities. That's the idea behind them. I can tell you that the law firms love them. And so Bricker Graydon, which is my favorite law firm, I recommend them to a lot of people. They do all of the legal work for every new community authority around. Loves them. Lots of money to set up a new community authority. Lots of billable hours in setting up a new community authority. And so Franklin just set one up. It doesn't have, it's more unique. It's in their commercial area. They don't have any properties that have gone into it yet, so I don't know how that'll go. What's the big one? Liberty Center. Liberty Center is a new community authority. It's almost gone bankrupt a couple times. The commissioners have had to bail them out. So I'm not a fan of new community authorities. I don't like more layers of government, which is effectively what it is. I don't like more taxes. And so I'm a pretty strong opponent of them. But obviously Franklin and General Creek are both on them.
well, the way it was explained to me was that it could go to the municipality.
Maybe, so the way they work, yeah, no, not maybe, yes, they could. Because members of the new community authority are almost always members of the local elected body. So in Union Village's case, Turtle Creek Township appointed some of the members on it. Franklin's case, they appointed the members on it. So yes, it's another way of taxing those people to get more money from that community. But almost always, there's additional money, not almost always there's additional money that goes to the lawyers, every single time. But usually there's also additional money that comes out of it and goes to the developers and then the city, and so I'm much more in favor of if we need more money, put it on a levy, let's get new money, if that's what we need, rather than these creative ideas that I'm a lawyer. I've worked in a private practice. I don't have any problem with lawyers making money. I like making money. I don't love the way they set these things up. They're the ones that benefit from them almost always. But it's kind of an interesting thing about impact fees. A lot of us believe in impact fees. This idea that, all right, you're going to come bring all this in, you should pay more because we need new roads, we need all these new things. They're not legal in the state of Ohio. Hamilton Township was the case. They tried to do it. They put large impact fees in to try to limit the residential development. They were found to be illegal. They would pay it all back. It was a huge mess. So that would be a constitutional change to prevent, to allow impact fees. I don't see that happening, but I think they're a good idea. I think they could add some value, but they're not allowed.
You said that if the governor signs this into law, that your taxes will only go up rate of inflation.
No.
How does that affect the 10 mil inside village and the 20 mil floor districts?
Man, you're hitting big words that I was trying to avoid. That's exactly what they affect. That's what they're directed at. And so the 10 mil inside millage is that money that we talked about that the village, township, and schools all get. That was created in the 1930s. And in the past, when values went up, those rates stayed the same, and that's where we saw our small tax increases in the past. The 20 mil floor is the biggest thing of all of that. Every 80% of the school districts in the state are at the 20 mil floor, including Wayne, including Springboro, including Clinton, Massey, Lebanon, Franklin, Harlan, all of them. And that was when values went up, rates used to come down, they hit that 20 mil floor. For all intents and purposes, inside millage and the 20 mil floor don't exist anymore. They're basically just like every other levy now. They are going to come down going forward. The only increase we're going to get off those is inflation. So they're not going to come down. If values go up 30%, your fire levy goes down 30%. Now, your inside millage and your 20 mil floor levies are going to come down 21%. And they're just going to be that, I'm making up numbers, but if you had 30% increase and 9% inflation, your 20 mil floor would come down 21%. So you only got that 9%. Does that make sense?
So you need to come up with different ways to fund township road departments, schools.
All the above. Yeah, that there is going to have to be new ideas. On the one side, and I believe this a little bit, I'll just be honest, everybody in the room is not going to agree with this. When you starve the beast a little bit, they get more creative. And I've seen it happen, and Springboro Schools is the best example. Springboro Schools has been starved, and they've created great results as it now. They have a lot of built-in advantages, so let's not kid ourselves that Springboro's got it set up pretty well. But Wayne's done the same a little bit. They've made more with less. So that's going to happen. But let's not kid ourselves. You still have to fund these things. You still have to pay for people. You still have to buy trucks. And we're going to have to find ways to do that. One way is more property tax levies. The other way, and it's been happening a lot, Kings just did it, City of Lebanon just did it. They said, let's tax income a little more and property taxes a little less. I think it's something that everybody should be talking about. And it addresses what you said, sir, I'm sorry, I haven't caught him his name, but City of Lebanon did this, and I worked with them on it, and it went against my own interests. I live in a very standard, small little house, not a ton of value, but I have good income. Lawyer, my wife has good income. They raised the income tax and lowered property tax. I pay more, no doubt, but senior citizens don't. In general, senior citizens don't have much income. And it's an earned income tax, so Social Security is not taxed. So when you do that, an earned income tax, if we truly want to help seniors, that's the fix. That's the easiest fix, is an earned income tax that they don't pay much on, but we generate more money. It keeps up with inflation, because in general, incomes keep up with inflation. And so Kings just did it, Carlisle has it. Carlisle is the second lowest taxes in the county, in part because they have an income tax in place. Kings just passed one. I think that's the future. I would love everybody to start talking about it. It doesn't work for everyone, but I think it should be part of our conversations moving forward. The biggest problem in all of this is townships. Townships have one way to tax you, and that's property taxes. That's all they can do. Yeah. So, you know, and the advantage, though, of shifting schools to income tax is you take some of that burden off townships. You know, you allow that chart that I showed, I'm going to flip all the way back. Okay, this button, see what happens. Yeah, nothing. Oh. You know, I think that we could see this shift, you know, the township's the 6%, right? Yeah, my color blindness aside, the township's the 6%. And so, think about that. All the services that the township provides to you, they're only getting 6% of your property, and they're not getting money from anything else, right? They get a little gas tax money, but they're not getting any of your money in other ways. I think seeing the 65 get a little smaller and the 6 bigger would be great if we could do it with an income tax for the school. I don't know enough public school. I'm just, you know, creative ideas that I think we need to be talking about. But things like that, the 10% is an example. You know, the county functions largely off sales tax. And I think increasing the county sales tax so we could shrink that 10% to allow it to go other ways. So getting creative with things like that to better diversify those are things we're going to have to do. The good thing or bad thing is everything that's going to happen going forward, you're going to decide. And that's what I want. I believe in democracy. It is a disgusting, nasty process, but it's better than all the other ones. And I don't like seeing your taxes go up just because of some function of government. They should go up because you vote for them to go up. 82% of us in the state said for them to go up. Most levies in Warren County pass because we know where the money's going. We trust our fire departments. We trust our schools. They pass. But we should get to decide. I know it's not always fun. I hate levies. I lived in Little Miami for 9 straight levies. They were awful. And so I don't want to go through all that. But, you know, that's democracy at work. Great questions. Go ahead.
So who owns the data for that income tax, you know, where do you see that?
It's all at the state. So the good and bad part about state income tax, there's almost no expense to the school at all, because the state takes care of all of it. It's a really positive, again, you talk about consolidated services. The state does a lot of the work, literally zero work for the county auditor, most importantly. And so, yeah, the state owns all of that, and they can give you exactly what a state income tax, what an income tax would generate. One negative, and it's just something to think about as we learn more about these things, the city income tax is excellent because you tax the people who live there, but also the people that work there because they're doing things, they're in your city, they use your EMS, they're around, they pay income tax too. The school tax doesn't work out. It's only on residents. So that's going to be a unique thing in the law. I think for Wayne, it's probably a good thing. It hurts places like Mason, where you have a lot of people that drive into Procter & Gamble and G and things like that. But for Wayne, where you're a wealthier community based largely on residential, I think an income tax, again, I haven't seen the numbers, so we could see them tomorrow and they make no sense. But I just think it's an interesting conversation that a lot of districts will be having going forward. I mean, here's your guys' thoughts. I mean, I guarantee everyone in this room will probably pay more on a 1% income tax than they would on a similar sized property tax levy. Like that idea, hate that idea, never want to hear it again? There it is.
I like the idea for the school.
Yeah,
The township basically can't levy income tax.
that's right.
And then you were talking about 71% of people would abolish property taxes. I wonder if that 71% how many of them actually vote
Yeah.
versus the 82% that levies that passed. What was the voter turnout for that?
Very low.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's always, a hard thing with that. And the way that poll was done, the 71%, do you want to get rid of the property taxes? Of course, I would raise my hand, I would love to get rid of property taxes, that's great. How do you replace them? And so I talked to the guys, again, they were at my horse parade, it's not my horse parade, the whole thing. I think ownership. And I went up to him, I said, listen, what's the plan? I got kids in public school, I went to public school, what's the plan? And they said, oh, we've got a plan. We're gonna put a 2% sales tax in place. I said, okay. Well, how much money do we generate from property taxes? Well, I don't know. $24 billion is the number, statewide, $24 billion. And if you took the state sales tax and doubled it, you took the state income tax and doubled it, you'd still be 50% short. You'd bring in $12 billion. And so it's just not realistic, and so I'm all for realism. I hope that I've conveyed. I'm all for creative solutions. I'm all for realistic differences and changing. I don't think the way we do it's great. I think there's a lot of ways we can improve. I know that doesn't work. That all being said, and I've beaten up on these guys all night. I had these same ideas 5 years ago. I got an award for it. The auditors have been talking about the same thing for years. This didn't happen because of the auditors. This happened because of them.
Yep.
They scared everybody. The state legislature was looking for solutions. We had them for them. None of this would have happened but for them. And so, I'm not saying that out there. I'm not giving them that much credit, but in this room, let's be honest, they forced that to happen, and they deserve the credit for that. If I was at my claim victory, I'd say we just did all this and go on our way.
Probably don't want it to go to the bottom.
I don't know. I've asked them that, and it's hard because it's kind of like the Tea Party group before. They're not like an organized group. It's just guys. It's just people. And so I think there's some of them that are that way, and there's some of them that it's a fun time on Saturday to be out talking to people, and so yeah. Any other questions, ideas, things you'd like to see me do different, us do different?
Talk on the revenue side of the equation.
Yeah.
What conversations are happening on the expense side?
That's a great question. Too few. I had a great conversation with a big developer. No, he didn't build your fire department, Justin Conacher. He's done a lot of fire departments up here. There's a lot of expenses that are forced mandates on local governments. When they built the firehouse, which was a challenge for parts of it, there's a lot of state requirements on those that don't make a lot of sense. When the school builds, they have a lot less rules on them than when the fire department builds. So we get rid of some of those. We get rid of some of these mandates that allow for us to build more and do things cheaper. I think that'd be a good starting point. I go back to consolidation and shared services. So Carrie's here, I'm gonna call them out again. The ESC does a lot of this, right? They help with subs, they help with busing, they help with special needs students. We need to do more shared services so we can cut administrative expenses. Again, I want to cut spending. We're already in first place. We can get better. It doesn't mean we can't get better. But everybody else, we don't have anybody to look at and say, how are they doing it so that we can improve like them? Everybody's looking at us and saying, how do we get more like them? So I'm all for ideas. I think that, and I brought this up to a candidate the other day. As an American, as a Republican, the idea of competition is a good thing, right? That's just ingrained in us. Competition is good. Competition is bad in the public sector. And here's my thinking, and I'm going to test on this, but hear me out and tell me if you agree. The chief has to compete constantly for manpower. Constantly. Every guy he gets in, he gets him trained, and then they leave him to go to a bigger fire department where they pay him more. It's usually clear people. Does that happen, Chief? Every day, right? And I see it all the time. That's competition. we're competing, which is driving up the cost because the resource is manpower and we're in short supply. So if we cut competition by consolidating fire departments, they're not competing with each other. Those guys can't play us off each other. It drives down costs. I think that happens with school teachers too. If we have less school districts, there's less competition for administrators, for staff. It's going to drive down costs. I strongly believe that our licensing requirements in Ohio are a mess. It is way too hard to get licensed in different areas, and as such, we have a shortage of teachers in certain areas. I'd like to fix those. So those are the kinds of ideas that I think we need to do. I'm a county auditor, I can't do any of that. Your legislators you should be talking to, your local people. But if we find ways to do that, the fire chiefs know, I got a great relationship with our fire chiefs, I think, most of the time. We talk a lot. The more we can get shared services, I think that's the way to drive things down. I do think, as a conservative Republican, we always think, let's spend less, let's spend less. And I agree with that. We can't get a whole lot less. Like when I was testifying, they're like, well, we'll just get rid of 15% and we can cut everybody's taxes 15%. That's hard. There are places we can cut, but it is really hard in a lot of areas to do that, especially when you're dealing with unions. Almost everything we're talking about here are union salaries. You can't just come in and cut union salaries. You can't do it. And so I agree with you. I think the main conversation needs to be spending, but I think for those of you in this room, you care about this stuff. A lot of you are elected officials. You've looked at those budgets. There's not as much fat on them as people on the outside think. Not fair?
Are we lining our pockets though?
Well, I know, and I know your township trustee salary is pretty high, so, you know. Any ideas, I mean, you've been around it, anything where you think, man, if we cut this, I'd love to hear those kind of things.
No, I think you're right, there's consolidation.
Yeah.
You can't have one discussion about fallbacks and over savings of money, but then not have a conversation the other side of the expense.
Yeah.
I mean, that equation doesn't work. So, and I'm not saying that you cut everything in sight, but that's not the goal.
Yeah.
You know, property values would suffer, and schools would suffer, if they just don't suffer.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. I think there has to be a more transparent effort
Yeah.
to put expenses in front of the public.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to say expenses are law, we can get them.
Yeah.
Show it.
Yeah.
If you show it, and you lay it in front of people, they have nothing to do but to recognize it.
Yeah.
And I think that's this unknown that everyone sits in, turns into the speculation of misuse.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think it's 100% accurate. 100%. And I am, again, too deep into it, so I see the other side more. So we had something called Open Checkbook. If you've ever heard of that. So we were the first people to adopt Open Checkbook in the state of Ohio. I was at the press conference game. And we had it up, and it had every single expense for the county. And you could sort it, you could see it, you knew everybody's salary. And it also had this great tool that told you how many people looked at it. And it was on, if you've ever, everybody's been on our website, wcauditor.org, my little plug. It's got property search, which is by far the most used tool where you can, see your neighbors and everything like that. And then right next to it was Open Checkbook, right there. And we would get, on average, about 2 views a month, and those would be for less than 60 seconds, And so I think people don't want to know some of it, but part of the problem is it's so much that people that want to dig in, once you get into it, you're like, holy cow, this is just too much, and they get overwhelmed. So I think we've got to find a better way of showing people, to your point, we've got to find a better way of showing people that are naturally skeptical, which Americans are naturally skeptical people about taxes. It's kind of how the whole country formed, right? And so that's what we are. And so we've got to find a better way of showing them we're using your money right. And I think we think about that a lot. We've got to do better. I think about that a lot at the county. We've got to do better, and that's kind of why I like to come to places like this and say, Wayne does a better job than 600 or 587 other places. Can they do better? Sure. But 587. Now, I will tell you, last month I was in Carlisle, does a pretty good job. I was in Franklin, and I told them, they don't do a good job. They really are struggling. They're in a bad place. They've got to figure things out better. And I think we've got to be honest about that. We just got to say where we're doing well, where we've got areas that we've got to improve on. They're getting better, they're working at it, but they've got some other things that we've got to work on. It's been great. Other questions, ideas?
So everybody give a big round of applause.
People don't have it, come, I'll give you my cell phone, my email, anything you want. If you've got questions, you're like, I want to ask this, but I want to do it in the room, I'm always open to that. If you have like a homeowners association, or, the village wants me to come out, or, just the school, let me know. We do this all the time, between Paul and I, somebody will be there. So I do appreciate you guys staying this long and listening to this very exciting topic so much, so if there's anything we can help with, let us know. Thank you.